Hello and welcome to the FATBOSS guide to Ny'alotha the Corruptor on normal and heroic in Ny'alotha.
Yes, this last boss of the raid has a reasonably tight DPS check and requires a good amount of coordination throughout, otherwise you'll just fall behind and won't be able to recover.
Just like Carapace, this fight also has sanity, and if it drops to 0 you will become mind controlled after a 20-second output debuff. You can however use your extra action button throughout the fight to channel it back up. You use this at set points throughout the fight, which we'll cover when we get to them. When you pull the boss, you'll all enter the Mind Realm. Inside, you'll need to kill Psychus in order to leave and start phase 2. This needs to be done quick, as you will be losing sanity periodically from the Mind's Eye, and you'll want to kill Psychus before he reaches 100% energy and cast Manifest Madness, which will definitely wipe you. This guy has a lot of health, but fortunately you can make him take 50% more damage for 20 seconds by killing a Synapse tentacle when he is within 8 yards of them, and this damage increase stacks. Each time you kill a tentacle, all of the other ones in the room will heal up to full, so you want all DPS to focus on nuking individual ones that are right next to Psychus. You should aim to go for around 5 to 6 stacks, at which point everyone can then swap to Psychus and nuke him down. You do not want to use DPS cooldowns at this point as much as you'd like to, as they're best used later on in the fight. Psychus himself has 2 abilities. He'll hit the tank with Mind Rack, dealing damage and applying a physical damage taken increase. This however can be interrupted. Most importantly, he'll cast Creeping Anguish. This spawns a pool underneath him which grows very quickly. If you're stood within it, it slows you down, it deals crazy high ticking damage, and it removes a lot of sanity. As a result, it's important that tanks take care when they're positioning the boss. You want to tank Psychus from tentacle to tentacle along the edges of the room, and whilst doing so you may want to delay his movement to the next tentacle if he's about to spawn an Anguish Zone, as long as this doesn't stop him from reaching the next tentacle before it dies. After killing 3 tentacles along the wall, it's at this point you'll then want to slowly start dragging him towards the middle, killing tentacles as you go. At which point you'll then want to backtrack on yourself, going back to where you originally entered the realm. By this time you should have enough stacks that you can just nuke him down. And once he is dead, you can then click on your body and re-enter the physical realm. One last thing to note about this phase is that the tentacles will be casting Probe Mind on random people. This just deals a burst of damage to them that will then chain to other players within 5 yards. Ideally you'll want to spread just to help reduce this incoming damage, but you should see this as a low priority as killing the tentacles and Psychus is far more important.
Now once you leave the Mind Realm, you will start phase 2. Ny'alotha will be stunned in the middle of the room. You should pop your DPS cooldowns and nuke him, as he is only vulnerable to damage during these short windows. Once the stun wears off, Ny'alotha will become immune to damage and will spawn a bunch of neurons on the ground. These neurons have pools of anguish around them, the radius of which reduces when you damage them. You want to move to the west side of the boss, which is an ideal location for the tentacle ads that will spawn soon, and then clear a path between the boss and the edge of the room, so that you can freely travel without running into any pools. The boss will then cast Mind Grasp. This will force your character either towards the boss or towards the wall. You can see which direction you're going to be going, as the shadows from your character are dragging you that way. You want to move as close to the boss or the wall as you can, whilst making sure you have a clear path behind you. If you do get dragged into the boss or pushed far into the wall of the room, you'll be inside pools of anguish and you're just going to die very quickly. Once this is over, a pack of tentacles will spawn on either side of you. There are 3 different types of tentacle that you'll need to deal with. Basher tentacles need to be tanked, otherwise they just go crazy and start hitting the raid with really nasty attacks. They deal ever increasing damage to the tank and deal a large burst of damage to them with their Void Lash cast. These ads should be focused down first. Corruptor tentacles don't need to be tanked and just cast Corrupted Mind. If this is uninterrupted, it applies a dot on a player. If this dot isn't dispelled, that player will lose a bunch of sanity. So you want to make sure you keep these kicked as much as possible, and if any debuffs do accidentally go through, they should just be dispelled. These are the ads that you should focus down second. Lastly, you have Spike Tentacles. These are just little guys dotted around the place that randomly deal small bursts of damage to people. These should be focused down last. Whenever an ad dies, it will send out zones next to players. Make sure to dodge it as it does deal a large amount of damage and does drain your sanity. For the first wave of ads, the raid should be evenly split in 2, with one team dealing with the set on the left and the other on the right. Now whilst in this physical realm, the boss will be dealing low damage to the raid every 5 seconds, whilst occasionally dealing a large burst of damage to the raid over 3 seconds. Both of these just need to be out healed, so make sure you don't range your healers. Most importantly, the boss will cast Paranoia on a timer. This creates several pairs of players. These players are linked with a beam, and whilst they're not within 5 yards of each other, they'll be taking ever increasing ticking damage. So these players need to get to each other soon, but they shouldn't rush too much, because if they go near a player that they're not linked with, they're going to lose sanity. So everyone should pre-spread for Paranoia, and then stay away from players who have the debuff. The debuffed players then just need to carefully make their way over to each other, and then stand on top of each other until their debuff drops. Around the time the first wave of ads should be dying, a mind gate portal will open nearby. Everyone at this point should use their extra action button to restore all of their sanity. This takes players who stand within it into the Mind Realm, where they just need to repeat what they did in Phase 1. You have 2 of these Mind Gates throughout Phase 2, and you cannot send everyone down because 1, there are still tentacles to deal with in the normal realm, and 2, when you leave on Heroic, you cannot enter another Mind Gate again. So you want to separate your raid into 2 teams of equal strength. Half of them should enter this first gate, and the other will enter another gate later in the fight. Whilst half of the raid is in the Mind Realm, the other half will need to continue killing ads. These spawn in set locations, so it's the same from pool to pool. Also, you will no longer get 2 Basher tentacles spawn at once, as you only have 1 tank available. Now, the Mind Realm in Phase 2 is significantly more challenging than Phase 1, as Psychus has the same health, but you only have half the DPS, making the Manifest Madness cast at 100% energy an actual real threat. Additionally, each Mind Realm has an effect going on within it. The first Mind Realm has fire swellies that you need to dodge, otherwise you lose sanity, take damage and become disoriented, and the second Mind Realm will deal damage to you as you move around, so you want to move in small bursts to make sure that your healers can top you in between movements. If you're struggling to make the damage requirement, it may be worth putting mobile DPS in the first Mind Realm and more immobile DPS in the second Mind Realm. Psychus will now spawn on the opposite side of the room. You want to get at least 5 or 6 stacks of the damage increase on him and then pop damage cooldowns to nuke him before the stacks drop. Now, there are so many different routes you can take for Psychus for this phase, but we recommend meeting him halfway and dragging him to the edge of the room. You then move along the wall until you run out of synapses and then start backtracking again. This should put you back at your bodies and Psychus should have the stacks that you desire. Once Psychus has been defeated, the boss and all tentacles in the physical realm will be stunned for 30 seconds. You want to use this time to clear up any remaining ads and then slam the boss once again. You'll then have the neuron spawn and the mind grasp mechanic occur. This time you should be on the eastern side of the boss, as this is where the next set of tentacles spawn once the mind grasp is over. You'll then need to kill a double basher tentacle pack, and then the mind gate will reappear. Everyone should use their extra action button to gain their sanity back for a second time, and then the other group should enter the Mind Realm. Once Psychus is defeated for the third and final time, everyone should re-enter the physical realm as soon as possible, clear up any ads, and then get ready for Phase 3.
At the beginning of Phase 3, the boss RPs for quite a while, and from this point on will take full damage the entire time. So right at the start of the phase is a really good time to use Bloodlust and any DPS cooldowns if you have them available. Once active, the boss doesn't need to be tanked. He will no longer cast Paranoia or do the crazy burst of AoE damage. Instead, he has gained 2 new abilities. He will apply Evoke Anguish debuffs to all players, which deal ticking damage over 8 seconds. When they expire, you will leave a small pool of Anguish on the ground that will grow a little bit. Each time the boss casts Evoke Anguish, all Anguish pools will grow in size. To counter this, all players should stack on a single point and then quickly move as soon as their debuffs have dropped. Each time the debuffs are applied, you can stack up on one side of the pools, drop them and move again. You just rinse and repeat this throughout the phase. It's a possibility that this isn't the intended strategy and Blizzard may hotfix it so you cannot stack up. If this isn't the case, then instead you'll have to place them in a line between the boss and the wall, and then have the entire raid move in the same direction every single time they spawn. Regardless of what strategy you use, it's very important that you do not put the Anguish pools directly behind the raid, as the boss will occasionally cast Mind Grasp in this phase, and you want to make sure that people can easily find a spot that they can stand in without being pushed into a pool. The boss will also occasionally spawn eyes around him, 2 on normal and 4 on heroic. These start rotating around the boss and then send out a glare beam. If you're hit by this, you take damage and you're feared. You want to find a gap between these eyes and rotate around the room with them just to avoid getting hit. However, if you're ever in the situation where you're getting too close to the Anguish pools, always choose getting hit by the beam rather than the Anguish. The Anguish does way more damage, and you can have your shamans pre-place a Tremor Totem, which will immediately remove the fear once you're on the opposite side. The final thing to know about this last phase is the Fort Harvester ads. These spawn pretty frequently and need to be tanked. They'll cast Mind Rack just like Psychus does, but you cannot interrupt it in this phase. So tanks should taunt off each other when their debuff drops, which is usually around the 1 to 2 stack mark. Aside from this, the ad will cast Harvest Force. This will do a flat burst of damage to all players within the zone around the ad, whilst also draining 200 sanity split between all players. If less than 3 players are hit by this, then the ad will just drain 50 sanity from everybody in the entire raid. So all players with high sanity should stand within the zone just to help split the sanity drain. The ad should be tanked near the boss, and all DPS should focus it down as a high priority, as you'll want to avoid having multiple ads up at once. Towards the end of the phase, however, 2 Fort Harvester ads will spawn at the exact same time rather than just the one. And this is where the damage check of the fight exists. If you did poor damage to the boss during phase 2 and you've gone into this last phase with the boss at a relatively high percent, then you're just going to struggle and you're going to have too many Thought Harvester ads and you're not going to be able to keep up. Ideally, when the first 2 Thought Harvester ads spawn, the boss is so low that you can just ignore them, soak their circles whenever they spawn, and just nuke the living shit out of the boss. The last thing to mention is your sanity in this phase. Instead of using your extra action button at set times, you'll want to just use it whenever you drop to low sanity. But that's the fight, the boss dies at 2%, and you get an awesome cutscene.
It's excellent. Thank you very much for watching. Before you go, do go and check out our guide over on Wowhead. It has short, simple phase breakdowns and useful maps and images that you can use to help you defeat this boss. This guide will be updated frequently, so make sure you keep an eye on it if anything changes. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you soon with other raiding content of some sort.
Yeah, catch you later.
Bye.